What's up everybody, it's your boy Ember from Ember Productions, and today I am back with another commentary video. Today, I'm finally fulfilling my promise because I decided I was going to finally do what I thought was good about RWBY today as the first part of a two-part video. This isn't exactly a proper review of RWBY, it's more of just looking over what I found good about the show when I first started watching, and the next episode will be what I found bad about the show over time. Personally, I really liked the show, it's just once it got started on a certain direction, it started to fall out of favor for me. Obviously, everyone else is going to have a very different opinion of it, so some things that I might find enjoyable, some other people are going to find annoying, and vice versa. But personally, I'm just going to see what I liked about the show in this video, and obviously in the next video, I'm going to talk about what I dislike of the show. With that being said, let's get into it. And welcome to Ember's Hot Takes. I think the best way to start off this video would probably be with the most important thing of any story, that being the premise. While the premise may come off as slightly generic to the uninitiated, I actually kind of like it when it comes to the overall world with stuff like the Grimm and the Huntsmen and the different civilizations that have different characteristics. A common comparison to RWBY is actually the old Avatar: The Last Airbender show that was on Nickelodeon when I was a kid. One of the more common comparisons is usually that the world that they inhabit, both in RWBY and in Avatar, are very similar, and I actually kind of like that. From a writer's standpoint, it actually has a lot of potential for world building because you're able to see how different cultures develop, and there's a lot that can be used with that. You can explore different cultures from across the world and have them in your show. World building like this, especially with cultures, can lead to certain sequences where other people have a different perspective based on that culture, so it allows diversity both in the characters and in the world. Another thing with all the mystical elements, say how all the Grimm are usually based on something like mythology, and how all the main characters have some relation to a fairy tale. It allows for different interpretations of media throughout these mythologies and stories with their own personal flavor. I also like the idea of having mostly mortal people fighting some existential threat like the Grimm. For those of you who watched my gameplay videos, you'll know that I like Dark Souls and I also like Bloodborne. So you guys know this is a theme that I actually like. For those of you who are new here, and this is the first video of mine that you're watching, hey, how's it going? Welcome to the channel. Overall, while the premise is a bit generic, I do like it. Moving on from the premise, we're going to go on to the tone of the show. Now, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, because when I'm talking about the tone that I like, it's mainly for the tone that's in volume 1 through 3, then volume 4 through 5, but then I start to hate the tone of the show after volume 6 unto volume 8. But this video isn't here to bash RWBY, this is the good part of the RWBY franchise, so I am going to stay positive for this episode. Speaking of which, most of RWBY in the volumes 1 through 5, they usually had a positive tone, which yet again was very comparable to Avatar: The Last Airbender, especially with how most of the series was positive up until volume 3, where the climax of it was an emotional gut punch to everybody watching. It was amazing. Overall, the tone for most of the series was pretty enjoyable for me. Next on the list for the series, I would say would probably be the Protagonists. Funny enough, this is another double-edged sword because it was halfway through the series where they started to become unenjoyable, but for most of the first half, I really enjoyed the Protagonists. Most of the time, each of the characters had pretty steady character development when they started off as a stereotypical character. Weiss had the most development, especially during season 1. My overall favorite moment in the series was actually with Yang recovering after losing her arm. She had fallen down pretty damn hard, and yet eventually after a bit of time to recuperate, she eventually got back up and got back into the fight. It made me legitimately interested in her character and really hopeful for the rest of the series. I also liked Yang because she was sort of the caretaker of the team and basically looked after everyone else. Both her and the other characters were developing and becoming their own characters off of a stereotype, which is something that I really liked. But of course, we can't have Protagonist without the other important part of this scenario, the antagonists. Take a shot every time I say it, but this is another double-edged sword. Personally, for the villains that I like, I rank them as Hazel, Watts, Tyrion, and then Adam. Hazel is what I would call the sympathetic villain, mainly because his reasoning is to avenge his sister, which is a bit more admirable than most. Watts is what I would call the opportunistic villain because he's not particularly invested in Salem, but he is invested in moving himself forward and getting his own personal revenge against Atlas. Tyrion is what I would call the broken villain, mainly because of his mental state, but most of his antics are freaking hilarious to me, especially with how his escape from the Atlas ship in Volume 7, he's wearing the pilot's hat, and it's pretty funny to me. Most of his antics come off as funny over actually annoying. Finally, the best bad guy for me would probably be Adam, mainly because he's a mix of a sympathetic villain, but also an opportunistic villain. His initial premise of wanting to make lives better for Faunus is admirable, but the way he goes about it by being an extremist and hurting innocent people is what makes him unsympathetic. What makes Adam even better of a villain is his presentation of having an intimidating appearance, as well as having an extreme amount of power behind it. Seriously, he takes off Yang's arm in one strike like it was fucking nothing. Overall, these villains make the show a lot more interesting because it has different villains with different motives and different personalities. And yet, they're not even the best part for me. In my humble opinion, the best attribute of RWBY is its music. Jeff Williams and Casey Lee Williams kill it on almost every single track in the show. My personal favorite song is Yang's theme of Ignite, Don't At Me. With all that being said, I think that's pretty much all the bases that I think made RWBY good, at least in my perspective. But, then again, that's just my opinion. If you disagree, leave a comment. If you do agree, leave a comment because I'm interested to hear your opinion. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next episode. Now, I'll probably do another gameplay video before getting into the next commentary video. But the next commentary video should be the part 2 of this, which is what I think went wrong with RWBY and why it fell out of favor for me. But until then, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. And, bye-bye!